Hey guys, welcome to another chess video. And today we'll be continuing our new series where we're going through the book, How to Beat Your Dad at Chess. So last time we looked at the... Holy shit, what the fuck's going on? Okay. Last time we looked at the Anastasia's mate, and after we took a look at all of the components necessary to make the mate happen, then we did a bunch of Anastasia's mate puzzles on chess tempo, and I had a real hard time making that custom set correct, but in the end we got it. So just to kind of go over what an Anastasia's mate looked like, it was the knight on the second rank, controlling some of the king's flight squares, the king in the corner. There are two major pieces, basically one looking at that the H or A piece. Generally, it's on the king side, so the H piece, the pawn on the H file, and then once it's taken care of, once a forced trade happens with the king, then the next major piece comes into the H file to mate the king. Not having a good day with words today, apparently. But you get the general idea. You've seen the pattern. If not, go check out the video. It's not good, just like this video. But yeah, let's keep on going. So today we're looking at the missing defensive F pawn. An absent F pawn makes the diagonal longer. The black F7 pawn is an important defense. If it has been moved, lost, or exchanged, the castled king is often more vulnerable. So what we're looking at here is, I think, called the Greco. And in this scenario, because of the missing F pawn, you have a piece that has diagonal capabilities, holding that flight square for the king, and then similar to the Anastasia, we're going to have one piece attack, the vulnerable pawn on the H file, and then have a major piece move in to control that H file after the trade. In this case, I don't know if the king actually has to take on H7 though, right? Like, let's say knight takes H7, king can just stay there. Couldn't we do something like queen to H5 at that point? What's to stop that from happening? And then there's no queen to H5 afterwards, right? I don't know. Anyway, but if the king were to trade, then the queen coming into H5, that would be checkmate because there would be no flight square on the G8. This is particularly the case when white has a bishop placed on A2 G8 diagonal. Right, of course. Of course. Black's king is usually in the H8 square. Is that one of the components or not? Probably. Shielded from attack by its own pawns on G7, H7. The problem is that the black king has very few escape squares, right? No, not a lot of flight squares. If white can administer a check with a queen or a rook on the H file, a black king is almost invariably in major trouble. White's goal is therefore to open up the H file in any way possible, which usually means a sacrifice. Sure, okay, yeah. Typical pattern with a missing F7 pawn. We got that same scenario again. Black is currently shielded by H7 for sure. White sacrifices his knight with knight takes H7, and then king takes H7, opening up the H file. And then, of course, as we talked about, queen to H5, that would be checkmate because the king has no flight squares. My question still stands. Why was it necessary to take on H7? I don't know. Maybe if we looked at the position on in the whatchamacallit, in a board analyzer, we could see. But I'm too stupid to understand by myself. The missing defensive F pawn here. Here the H file is already open, and the black rook is itching to exploit this. And of course we have that diagonal piece. This time a bishop looking at that G1 square, so the king has no flight square. So after rook takes h2, check. King takes h2 is forced. There's queen h8, check. And king has to move to g3. That's the only safe square he has. And then there's queen h4. And apparently that's checkmate. Is that true? Yes. Yes, it is. Because that's a dovetail. Dovetailed in by one of his own pieces and a controlled square by one of my pawns. Okay. The missing defensive f-pawn again. This time we have the white bishop controlling that g8 square. Not necessarily an easy way to open up this h7 after knight takes h7 and king takes h7. Again, I don't understand why the king has to take it. I mean, in this scenario, there's no way to block this, actually. So if the king doesn't take on h7 this time, it doesn't matter because let's say they do a different move like, you know, ooh, actually, interesting. I feel like there's an in-between move here. Ooh la la. Ooh la la. There is a, oh, it doesn't actually help him, though. It does move the queen, though. So on knight h7, instead of moving his rook or trying to save it or taking the knight, there is bishop takes d2, which forces the queen to take on d2. I guess the king can take on d2, but then that opens it up for, like, queen to d7. Um, but yeah, if bishop takes and then queen takes, then there is no queen going to the h file to open up. There's queen's on the wrong. Anyway, so if knight takes and then if king takes, then there is queen h3 check, king h7, king h7. What? Oh, sorry, I got ahead of myself. So queen to h3 check, king to g6. And then there is queen to g3, queen h7, or king h7 again. And then queen to h4, getting closer and closer. And then at some point there will be a mate. Okay. Same tactic though. The Greco. Before sacrificing the queen, it must be established that the black king cannot escape the safety via the g6 square. So in this, let's look at the scenario again. So if queen takes here, king takes, forced. Rook comes here, but then king still has a way to slither right out of there. The king can escape, but only temporarily. After king g6 comes a pretty finish. Bishop to f7. Ooh, that is a beautiful. Haha. Okay. So just because we have an empty f-pawn does not mean that we should just be sacrificing pieces all over the place. All right. So cool. That was fairly simple, fairly clear cut. I think that's pretty good, but I feel like all of the things we saw were the Greco. So if that's the case, maybe we should ensure that it is the Greco here. Greco is made as a checkmate pattern where the enemy's king is trapped in a corner with the help of a bishop. It is a great example of how a rook and a bishop can coordinate. Right. Interesting. This is a cool Greco's mate. And again, the f-pawn is gone. This is very, very pretty. Yes, indeed. See, this makes a lot more sense here. Knight checks. King doesn't have any room to move, so he has to take there. And then rook comes in, pawn takes, and then queen comes in. And then checkmate. Very good. Very good. This is just a continuation. Yes, yes, yes. Greco's mate, example 3. The last game is from a game of Edward Lasker. It is a unique take on the Greco. Interesting. Ooh. Oh, that is so beautiful. Queen comes in. King can move away, but then the next move is checkmate because of this control of the diagonal. So king has to take. At which point, bishop moves over to c2. Oh, that is so beautiful. That is brilliant. That is brilliant. Anyway, interesting note on Greco's mate. Greco's mate often occurs on either H file or A file, therefore it is one of the checkmate patterns that relates to H file mates. Thank you, Chess Fox, you random weird chess site. I don't really understand you. Alright, but I think a Greco's mate is definitely something that could be considered in the missing F-pawn thing. Mates that can happen with missing F-pawns. Let's see if there are any other names that we can... F-pawnless diagonal doom. Chess Kid. Whoa, what a site. Chesskid.com. Does this lead to chess.com in the end? I bet it does. This looks like something chess.com would own. It's sick fucks. No, I'm just kidding. Missing your F1, you should write him a letter by... Oh. Jessica Martin. You. Oh, you. Alright, cool. I'm sorry, I got hypnotized by the... I got hypnotized by the words, by the pretty words. So how did they take away the F-pawn? How did they get to the part of the game where the F-pawn's taken? Well, this is good. I want this to happen in my games. So here again, we're looking at the Greco. Oh my god, they have the exact position from the thing. Can we just analyze this here? Toggle engine analysis. Engine analysis. Analysis. This button does nothing. Huh. Here's another one. This looks like another Greco. Okay. Swallow's tail where? For this one? Oh, this is the one from How to Beat Your Dad, except from the other side. And take? Take? Swallow's tail. Oh, yeah. Wait, I thought this is the dovetail. Wait, which one's the dovetail and which one's the swallow's tail? Ah, now I'm confused. Dovetail mate. On Wix? On Wix.com. Yeah, this is the dovetail. And the swallow's tail is the one where the king is blocked behind like that. Chess for Kids article. Oh no. You're giving bad information to the kids. So Bounding Owl, plus on the terrible joke in the beginning, and then a minus for getting the swallow's tail and the dovetail mixed up. Ms. Martin. Huh. Okay. Oh, chess.com. I knew it. I knew it! Ah! Okay, well... I was wanting to make sure that we weren't missing any other type of... Uh-oh. You've seen my secrets! Oh no! I was gonna make sure that we weren't missing any other type of mate tactics that can happen from a missing F pawn. But it looks like everybody's just focusing on the Greco there. So let's just add the Greco into our study. Rather easy to do. We'll manage the sets. We'll go to the How to Beat Your Papa. That tickles me. That tickles me indeed. We will just add another rule. All of the following are true. No, any of the following are true. And we will say mate is a Greco's mate. Okay, and then we'll save it. Wait, Did this get lower? Or did I just not do the search yet? Maybe I didn't do the search yet. Maybe we should do the search. Ah, here we go. There we go. All right, that looks better. So now that we have the new set, let's do some puzzles, man. Let's do some puzzles. All right. That's very good. Okay. This looks like the Anastasia, except instead of being on the second file, we're doing it on the top edge there, similar to a back rank mate. Young. All right. That's quite good. Next one. Oh, and I remembered. So you know how with puzzles like the one we just did, there is a question of language, accuracy and language there, because it's not technically an Anastasia's mate, but it's Anastasia's mate-esque. The same principles kind of apply. So in that situation, maybe it would be better to call it a generalized Anastasia's mate or whatever. I don't know. But, you know, I got to figure that out. Figuring out the language and how we talk about things, I think, is very important when you're trying to learn. Generally helps, but let's just move on. I have no good ideas there. I think we're black. So, as black, we are trying to do a mate. What kind of mate is possible here? Is some kind of Anastasia thing possible? Or potentially a Greco type of thing? F pawn is gone. There are a lot of empty pawn spaces. However, there's no necessary diagonals being controlled. King isn't even in the corner, so we want to move him into the corner first. So the first thing I see is the knight to g4. And because this rook is controlling the third rank, the only place the king can go is to the h1. And what do we know about the knight being one file or rank away? Well, that forces the king onto the first rank, and then we can just checkmate him with an Anastasia-esque puzzle. There we go. Okay, so this one is very Greco, right? We got this open F pawn. You shouldn't have pushed that F pawn. What were you thinking? What were you thinking? It's probably to push away a minor piece earlier on. So now the king is stuck on the h8 file, and this version makes a lot more sense. Knight takes on g6, forcing a check. And since the king has no place to go, he must take, opening up the h file, and then the queen takes afterwards. Yeah. Ooh, and then I didn't calculate the extra move that black has there in trying to block the mate. So that's a minus for me. I should have taken that into consideration. All right. Well, this one is hilarious because there are no pawns at all. This is just him. Open. Bare. Let's try to figure out what we're trying to do. So, okay. First move. So, the first thing I saw, let's go in order of the things I saw. The first thing I saw was queen going to g7. If rook comes to block, then I can just take. I'm defended by the bishop, and that would almost be mate, if not for the fact that there's a queen here. So I want to remove one of the defenders from this file. So then I can do rook takes, at which point there's rook takes or queen takes on e7. So that makes this line not as good, because there would still be a rook that can take and then a queen that can take afterwards. However, if rook takes and then his rook takes on e7, then I have queen to f8, which is a mate thanks to this knight controlling the g7 square. So there are two options that black has when rook takes rook, but both of them lead to checkmate one or two moves after. Oh no, it's not that way? Okay. I feel like that was satisfactory. There must be a faster way to mate, I guess. So, okay, what if queen... Oh, I see, I see, I see. So the alternative is just queen goes first. Queen goes to g6, and then the only real... Well, actually, I was going to say the only real move is rook to g7, but what about queen g6, king h8? Where's the checkmate from there that's quick? Huh. Oh, I guess then queen just takes, rook takes, and then rook takes again. And once again, because of the places that, the squares that my minor pieces control, I can just checkmate there. That's interesting. All of those seem equally effective, but I think the line they're wanting from us is queen g7, rook to whatchamacallit, rook to g7, stopping the check, and then e7, or I mean rook to e8, rook takes e8 check, and that would work equally well. That's also not right. So both of these that are valid checkmates just isn't the right one. Insane. All right. So what do you want me to do then? Do you want me to do like a queen sack? This just seems so crazy. Oh, I guess there's queen to f7. Interesting. I guess that's the most effective and quickest mate. The other ones, oop, cancel. Don't want to go back. The other ones I was looking at are a lot more moves, I guess, or some amount of moves. Wait, one, two, one, two. Oh, right. One, two, three. Oop. Three, four. Okay. I gotcha. Okay. So, queen to f7, I guess, is the one they want, because that's the quickest, or guarantees the quickest one, quickest mate each time, right? Queen to f7. King doesn't have a lot of places to go. Oh, he can still go to h8. So this doesn't even guarantee the quickest mate. I'm so confused. Oh, is it queen to g7? Just straight up getting in his face? I think that is the quickest mate, because then there is no queen to h8 or king to h8 or f8. It's just sack the queen, the rook comes over, these squares are still controlled, and then I just checkmate there. My goodness. Okay. Alright, I understand. The alternatives, as I was thinking, yes, did guarantee a checkmate, but it was slower. That's my motto. Too slow, too weak. Cool. That being said, I guess that was a little bit of Anastasia there. Okay, so in this situation, we are black. What are we looking at? We are looking at an open f-pawn, the missing f-pawn. Alright, so do we have enough pieces to sack? This is one component. King in the corner is another component. Major pieces readily available for the H-file is the third component, and it looks like we have it. So let's do it. Let's do it. And also, one thing I should have noted, there cannot be a flight square on the G file or whatever second rank that the king is on next to. Gotta keep mind of that. Gotta keep mind of that. This could have been very bad if this pawn hadn't been there. For shame, Doc. For shame. Oh, by the way, speaking of Bugs Bunny, has anybody seen the new, what is it? What's his name? Super Eye Patch Wolf's video on, on Space Jam 2, because it is fantastic. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it because it is fucking bonkers crazy. It is great. Um, let's see here. What are we looking at? This is Anastasia-esque, only in the fact that we have a knight blocking one of the king's flight squares. But I would say, does this meet all the requirements to even call it an generalized Anastasia mate? I don't know. No, not really. Because the knight isn't on the second rank or the second file of the where the king is. He's like further away. He's controlling one of the flight squares, yes, but just because the knight is there to help out with controlling flight squares doesn't make an Anastasia's mate, right? But we got the two major pieces readily available to take on the H file, so we're good. Yeah, what are some of the tags? Yeah, Anastasia. Alright, well, that's cool. That's ish. Ish. Okay. So in this one, what are we looking at? What are we looking at? We're black. And if we move right now, that's just a lot of pain in our lives very quickly. So that's not great. What are we doing here? We can do rook to e1. Then there's going to be king to d2. And then there's rook to e2. And that only leaves a couple of squares for the king. On the third rank, now I'm wondering though, maybe rook to e1, king to d2, and then instead of rook to d2, what if we do knight to c4 first? Now since we have tempo, they can't do this because we have a check tempo. On that move, the king, again, only has these two squares that he can fly to. But now we would do rook to e3 once he moves to either of these. I guess moving here would make the most sense, right? Because after rook to e3, he would have b4. And then... man. This is tricky. Another line I'm thinking is like rook takes c2. King takes? That doesn't go anywhere, I don't think. Well, it's definitely not the knight move, because then the queen just takes on b7, and that's going to be a headache and a half. So, it's some kind of rook move. I would guess e1. But I don't want the king leaving from this file. We could do a quiet move, like a rook to h2. Oh, but then there's queen just takes the knight. So we have to... We're actually on a time crunch. We're on a tempo crunch here. So, yeah, okay. Rook to e1 forces king to c2. Then I have two possible moves here. I can do a rook to d2, or I can do knight to c4. Let's continue on with the c4 line. No, let's not continue with the c4 line. E1, D2, or yeah, E2, and then he can go here or here again. This time, knight is controlling that. That square is controlled. Rook, D rook to E3. You can move away. We can do this. He can take. That doesn't look great. But then we can do this. None of this makes sense to me. Oh, man. It's so tiring having to calculate so many flight squares, but I think this is probably something I have to do, and that'll make me a better chess player in the end. So again, E1, D2, E2. Let's say he goes to D3. Back to E3. You can go here to E2. Then I can do, or D2. Then I can do E2. Then he would have to move back. But this isn't with tempo or anything. Interesting. Okay, E1, D2, E2, D3, E3, E3, D2, knight to C4. Well, that's just checkmate. So going back to E2 is definitely not a good idea. Alright. So E1, D2, E2, D3, the E2 rook to E3. We don't want to go back to D2. So we would have to go to... king would have to go to D4. E rook to D... Or I mean... E3 rook to E4. Then he has flight squares here again. This is very confusing. I don't think I'm doing this right. But I don't know how to keep tempo while keeping the king trapped. I think it is... man, that is crazy. Okay, so that, the line that I... oh my god. This is fucking bonkers, dude. What the shit am I looking at? Okay, so the line E1, D2, E2, rook E2, check, king to D3, rook to E3, check, king to D4, rook to E4, and then if the king moves back, we then move our E1 rook back down to E3. King's only safe place to go is to D2, at which point then we have knight to C4. King can't go in anywhere on the E file. King only has one place to go on the D file or on C1, at which point then we can bring the rook back up to the first file to do a Greco-like maneuver. Okay, so we've taken a look at both of the possibilities when he does D3. What happens when he goes to C3? Do you know? I don't know. Then, okay, let's just move the rook back down to E3, and then the king, if he goes back to D2, we've seen that line before. E2, or not E2, we just do knight, and then because of all of the things we control, the king is stuck on D2. So on E1, king D2, rook D, E2 check, and then to king C3 here. After we do rook to E3, then the king is forced to go either to D4 or B4. If he goes D4, then we can do this again, the E4 line, rook to E4, king has to go to these two squares, but now he doesn't have the flight square on b4. Rook comes, forces him up, and then we force him up one more time. We've seen that line before. So then let's calculate b4 as the final thing. So rook e1 check, king to d2, rook to e2 check, king to c3, rook to e3 check, king to b2. This is the final line that we have to look at. And in this line, we can then do rook to e4. Ooh, there's a possibility of pawn to c4, but then there's rook takes on c4. And there are not a lot of squares. In fact, there is only one square that he can move to, which is a5, but then the rook can go to a5, and that would be very much a checkmate. So if we look at this again, from b4, where is the right place to go then? c4 leads to checkmate as well. And a5 leads to checkmate as well. Okay. So in fear of the Greco, we end up with a long-ass line that finally goes all the way to a hookmate at the end. Oh, he's going for this line. Okay. So this is very Anastasia then. Here we go. Wow, that was... I mean, yeah, I need a cigarette after that one. Holy goddamn. That's cool. That is very, very cool, and I'm glad I calculated that out. Interestingly enough, I feel like this puzzle specifically is in another beginner book series that I wanted to follow, but I never got into doing it. I'm sorry for slacking and, you know, slouching there, but you start thinking and it gets really hard. But yeah, I feel like the rook play in this was very similar to a puzzle in... I want to remember the name of the series. I got it in book form because there's no online version of it. But it's like a whole system of learning, I think, and it was very interesting. But this was like one of the first puzzles dealing with rooks and dealing with the king that was trying to move away. This might have been the exact puzzle actually. But yeah. That was really cool. That was a 7-move puzzle, and I felt like I did pretty good there. Wait, was it a 7-move puzzle? How many moves was this? It was, ooh, there was a queen sack. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yay! Yeah, that was good. That was very, very fun, and I enjoyed doing that puzzle. And I guess, you know, I was thinking when I was doing mate puzzles from 1 to 4 on Chess Tempo, like, I thought I was a badass, but I don't think I'm a badass until I get to actually calculating, like, mate lines in 5 plus at least. But yeah, I think that'll come with time. But with that being said, I think we did a good deal of learning today. We saw the weakness of f-pawns. We saw the components necessary to make a missing f-pawn mate happen, which turned out it was mostly just a Greco. So yeah, that was very cool, and we remembered all of the components for the Anastasia. And now we have some kind of language that we can use for when a mate is similar or using the ideas from the mating patterns we're learning. So this is an Anastasia-esque or a generalized Anastasia mate kind of thing. And I guess there would be Greco-esque things if you're using a queen, or maybe you're on the file instead of the ranks. I don't know. Who the fuck knows? Who the fuck knows? But yeah, if you've enjoyed the content, write me a comment. You don't have to upvote or subscribe or anything like that. But I do love hearing from people. So If you want more of this series or if you like this series, let me know. If you don't like the series, let me know. If there are things I can improve, let me know. If you want more editing, I'm not going to do that. But there's a good reason why I won't do that, and I'll explain later, but nobody needs to listen to abstract bullshit. So, thanks for watching the video, and I will see you guys next time. And next time, maybe we'll do more of this, or maybe we'll just go back to doing some mate puzzles, just back-to-back mate puzzles. And I promise I won't make us look through random games too much. Ish. Whatever. Have a good one. Goodbye!